Edward Leedskalnin, R.L. Poole, and the Revolution in Astronomy That Never Happened. This is Edward Leedskalnin. You probably never heard of him before unless you watch Simon Dan's videos. This is R.L. Poole. You probably never heard of him either unless, of course, you watch Simon Dan's videos. And this is Simon Dan, whom I'm guessing you've heard of. But what does this have to do with revolutions in astronomy, you ask? Not a whole lot, because there isn't going to be one, but it's been fun to watch Poole and Dan spar over this. I'm going to break this up into 3 videos in order to keep things to a reasonable length. In this first video, we're going to look into who this Leedskalnin was and what he was talking about. Then in the next video, we'll look at Poole and his understanding of what Leedskalnin was talking about, which, by the way, are some ideas on the geometry of Earth's rotation around the Sun. In the third video, I'll try my best to recreate Poole's concept in a 3D digital model, compare that to a model based on the standard accepted geometry, and then propose to Poole an approach he can use to demonstrate that his model is a more accurate representation of reality, if it is. There's clearly been some personality fireworks going on between Poole and Dan, much to the amusement of Dan's audience, including myself. I'm going to steer clear of that and focus on the science. I'll reserve the right to say a thing or two about that at the end, though. Now, who was Edward Leedskalnin? I'm going to start with what Wikipedia tells us. As usual, you'll find links to the resources in the video description. I'll say, after the reading I've done, that I would call him, in the most friendly and respectful way, an eccentric, someone who enjoyed the periphery of the world, the periphery of the mainstream, ideas that explored the limits. If you look him up online, you'll find people writing things like, quote, "Isn't he that guy down in Florida who claimed he could levitate rocks?" Well, no, actually. As far as I can tell, that was just the sort of thing he got a kick out of having people think about him. But more on that in a minute. Back to his bio. Edward Leedskalnin was born in Latvia in 1887. Little is known of his childhood, aside from the fact that his parents were not wealthy and he received only a 4th grade formal education. Edward was a sickly boy who often spent time reading books, helping him to develop an inquisitive mind and lifelong yearning for knowledge. It was suggested that he learn stonemasonry from his father and practiced his craft in Latvia after coming of age. At the age of 26, he was engaged to marry Agnes Skufts, who was 10 years, well, you try pronouncing that, who was 10 years younger. However, the girl who Leedskalnin later referred to as his, quote, "sweet 16, broke their engagement. He then decided to emigrate to North America. Boy, that's enough to break an idealistic young man's heart. So he goes to North America. He arrived in New York in 1912. After looking for suitable work around the East Coast, he relocated to the Pacific Northwest, which was experiencing a logging boom. While in Oregon, he filled his draft registration stating that he was self-employed, engaged in axe handle manufacturing. In the winter of 22-23, after contracting tuberculosis, Leedskalnin moved to the warmer climate of Florida, where he purchased an undeveloped parcel of land in Florida City, which at the time was lightly inhabited. On February 27, 1923, the Homestead Enterprise newspaper published a notice that, quote, "E. Leedskalnin, a Californian, has purchased an acre of the R.L. Moser homestead and is planning to erect a home soon." That's the sort of thing small-town newspapers printed in those days. Over the next 20 years, Leedskalnin constructed a massive structure that he called the Rock Gate and dedicated, in his own words, to the girl who had left him years before. Working alone and mostly at night, Leedskalnin eventually quarried and sculpted more than 1,100 short tons of oolite limestone into architectural and an engineering landmark that would later be known as Coral Castle. First, he built a house out of limestone blocks and wood. Then he gradually constructed the stone structure for which he is now famous. With a reserved personality, he eventually opened the Coral Castle to the public, offering tours for 10 cents. If any of you have been to Florida, it's got some wonderful limestone and something they call coral stone. And there's a lot of it everywhere. Now, it's not used anymore. It's protected. But at that time, you would just basically dig a pit and then build your house next to it with the stuff you dug out of the pit. And it's quite a beautiful stone as well as being very easily workable. When people were asking Leedskalnin how he had moved all the heavy stone on his own, he usually replied, quote, "I understand the laws of weight and leverage, and I know the secrets of the people who built the pyramids." Some local residents later remembered that as school children they had field trips to the construction site, and Leedskalnin personally explained manual methods of his work. Now, reading that, I suspect that he probably, in his eccentricity and middle to old age, enjoyed teasing the children a bit, playing with them, the kind of person that likes to make haunted houses on Halloween. I have a feeling he probably waved his hands in the air and said that I know the secrets of the Egyptians. I know all about counterbalances and leverage. And the children probably went back to school and said to each other, "Gosh, he said he could levitate rocks. Do you think that's true?" Leedskalnin was an eccentric and lived on an exclusive diet of crackers and sardines. In later years, he starved himself. In 1951, he checked himself into the hospital. He had suffered a stroke either before he left for the hospital or at the hospital. He died 28 days later of kidney infection at the age of 64. During the 19-teens, 20s, and 30s, society was really in ferment. I'm speaking mostly of the United States, which I know better, and also of Western Europe. People had woken up to the amazing advances of science. They were seeing it around them. People like Tesla and Edison appeared regularly in the news. Einstein wasn't just a physicist, he was a celebrity. At the same time, lots of not-so-brilliant and not-so-educated people, excited by all this, were exploring their own ideas. We had the rise of the spiritualists. We had people proposing all kinds of ideas like eugenics that would later be disproved. But this stuff was still too young to be disproved back then. It took time. We've had the benefit of another century of scientific advancement to sort out some of that nonsense. Well, Leedskalnin was one of those people. He had lots of ideas, and he liked to write about some of them. Let's look at Wikipedia again. Leedskalnin published 5 pamphlets on various subjects, advertising them in local newspapers. The only source for these pamphlets is Coral Castle Gift Shop. Actually, they've got a website now, too, which we'll take a peek at. Pamphlet, Moral Education, his first and longest booklet, a treatise on moral education, is printed only on the left-hand pages and begins with the following preface. Reader, if for any reason you do not like the things I say in the little book, I left just as much space as I used, so you can write your own opinion opposite and see if you can do better, the author. In the first section, Leedskalnin argues that girls should be kept pure and that boys are primarily a soiling influence upon them. On page 4 of A Book in Every Home, Leedskalnin writes, "Everything we do should be for some good purpose, but as everybody knows, there's nothing good that can come to a girl from a fresh boy. When a girl is 16 or 17 years old, she is as good as she will ever be. But when a boy is 16 years old, he is then fresher than in all his stages of development. He is then not big enough to work, but he is too big to be kept in a nursery, and then to allow such a fresh thing to soil a girl, it could not work on my girl. Now I will tell you about soiling. If anything that is done, if it is done with the right party, it is all right. But when it is done with the wrong party, it is soiling. And concerning those fresh boys with the girls, it is wrong every time." The second section continues along the theme of moral education with several aphorisms aimed at parents regarding their proper way to raise children. I can't help but point out here that he, as far as I can tell, never married and never had any children. The last section, political, reveals that the reclusive Leedskalnin had strong political views. He advocates for voting for property owners only and in proportion to their holdings. I can think of certain American politicians that would love that. And he argues that anyone who is too weak to make his own living is not strong enough to vote. Some writers have suggested that Leedskalnin's booklet contains further information on his electromagnetic research and philosophies encoded in its pages, and the blank pages are provided for the reader to fill in their decrypted solutions. It has also been suggested that Leedskalnin's frequent referral to his, quote, Sweet 16 may in fact refer to the numerological and or scientific relevance of the number 16 to his research and theories. There you have it, folks. He wrote that a mother's most important task is to ensure that her daughter remains, quote, chaste and faithful. In case a girl's mama thinks that there's a boy somewhere who needs experience, then she herself could pose as an experimental station for that fresh boy to practice on, and so save the girl. Nothing can hurt her anymore, the mother, the mama. She has already gone through all the experience that can be gone through, and so in her case it would be all right. Magnetism. Leedskalnin became interested in the general theory of magnetism. His 4 pamphlets addressed the interaction of electricity, magnetism, and the body. Leedskalnin also included a number of simple experiments to validate his theories, contradicting the standard model, but remarkably in line with the concept of, quote, magnetic moment and electronic spin theory. His thesis is based upon the theory that metal itself is not the magnet and that real magnets are circulating in the metal. These individual north and south pole magnets are particles smaller than atoms or photons, and each particle in the substance was an individual magnet by itself. So we've got 1 pamphlet on moral education and 4 pamphlets on magnetism and electricity. That adds up to the 5 pamphlets they mentioned. We're going to see here that there's actually nothing here about astronomy and the Earth-Sun rotation, so we're going to be looking elsewhere for that. In popular culture, Leedskalnin and his megalithic creation of Coral Castle became a part of the American popular culture due to the magnitude of a single man's effort and ingenuity. Some conjectured that he used esoteric, ancient knowledge, of course, to levitate blocks of stone and move them with the aid of the Earth's magnetic energy. Other explanations center on Leedskalnin's stonemasonry and logging experiences that allowed him to apply his work skills to tedious process of moving large blocks of stone using levers, wheels, axles, pulleys, ramps, and wedges without any electrical equipment. Let's take a moment to look at the Leedskalnin.com website. I don't know who runs this website. I don't know if it's the people that administer the Coral Castle or if it's some other group. But it's entertaining and interesting. You all might enjoy looking at it. There's a link in the description. I noticed down here that for a donation of $30 to this site, you will receive complimentary high-quality copies of all of Leedskalnin's original writings, and they've got them listed up here. So if any of you want to delve into the complete works of Edward Leedskalnin, here's your chance. I just wanted to take a look at a few of these pictures of Coral Castle. There were a few in here that caught my eye. We'll just click through them. A few of them like this are a little bit small, but overall I think they're worth a quick look. I love what he did with the stonework. It looks like an amazing place. I have occasion every few years to go to Florida, and I'm definitely going to check this out the next time I'm down that direction. I think this is part of his sundial. We can see it better here. It looks like these are the months. And there's the device for sighting Polaris. Here we're looking through the other stone that gives us a glimpse. We're not lining up quite properly, but there's crosshairs in this closer stone and then crosshairs in the further stone. And people picnicking. I wonder if they still charge 10 cents to get in. No idea what that's about. That's that cool Florida stone. It's full of holes. Sometimes orchids get their roots lodged into these stones and just start growing wildly over them. Admission 10 cents. Drop below. I'm going to assume those are his boots. For a guy that was described as anemic when he was a child, he grew up to be a stonemason and a logger. That's pretty impressive. Yes, it must be quite a place. I look forward to seeing it. Remember to ring twice. and blow your horn. Be careful. Anything you do on these premises is at your own risk. And there we've got some mysterious numbers carved on the rocks. They're no doubt the secret to the universe. If only we could decipher them. Well, on the other hand, that one there looks like it might have been a phone number. I don't know, maybe some pretty lady dropped by and he wanted to make a note of her phone number before she left. Maybe that's her address up there. Now we just need the street and we're all set to go. Oh yeah. Great sculptures. There's a stone observatory in India. Gosh, Chandigarh? Jaipur? I'll tack a photo onto the end of this video. I don't remember exactly where it is right now. That is along these lines. Wasn't built by one person, of course, but it was also amazing and very similar to this. Oh, I think I've seen enough. Hope you've seen enough. This is part one of what I think is going to be 3 parts. In the next video, we're going to take a look into detail at what R.L. Poole is saying that Leedskalnin says about Earth's orbit on this, around the sun. It all sounds a little bit confusing to me, and I'm going to have to do some sorting out before I make the video. So it'll be a few days, but part 2 will be on its way. Y'all have a wonderful day. Take care. Bye now.